Myths perpetuated by salespeople. There's no need to complicate matters with a rebate. I heard this the other day. A gentleman said that he had an opportunity to get a $10,000 rebate for a grocery store for some improvements they were doing, but the grocery store does millions of dollars a year in business. What's $10,000? So I thought, this is crazy talk. So let's do a little math, shall we? What's the earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization margin of a grocery store? Okay, what's the EBITDA margin? Turns out, and basically what we're trying to do here is we're trying to calculate how many boxes of Cheerios did that grocery store have to sell at $3.25 each to make the equivalent of that rebate that you're tempted to dismiss. And for this example, we employ a simplifying assumption that the margin on a box of Cheerios is the same as the margin for a typical enterprise in the grocery segment. Okay? So let's do our little calculations. Let's assume an EBITDA margin of 8% in the grocery business, and let's say that $10,000 rebate is equal to $125,000 worth of revenue last year. So in other words, they had to sell $125,000 worth of revenue and an 8% margin, EBITDA margin, to make $10,000. So how many boxes of Cheerios did that grocery store have to sell at $3.25 each to make $125,000 in sales last year? Holy cow, 38,460 boxes of Cheerios. Perhaps a full tractor trailer load? So basically, when you say, they don't really need the $10,000 rebate, they got plenty of money, they do lots of business, a very prosperous supermarket, the busiest one on the block. Think about how hard they had to work at an EBITDA margin of 8% last year to earn the economic equivalent of $10,000 to their bottom line. It's really a sobering thought. Now, in keeping with this, we have this digits to widgets spreadsheet, this worksheet, that allows you to fill in the blanks of what their margin is, what the average cost savings is estimated to be, how much revenue they had to do last year to get that sort of savings to their bottom line, doing it the old-fashioned way, what their typical widget is, what the revenue per widget is. In fact, we also talk about the revenue per sale. What's the difference between a widget and a sale? A widget is, say, a box of cereal. A sale would be the typical grocery checkout total. So a customer might spend $40 in groceries, of which one element would be a $3.25 box of Cheerios. In an Italian restaurant, a widget might be a pizza. The sale would be the pizza, the garlic bread, and the sodas for the table. So, obviously, if you're trying to impress people and say, in order to get this kind of economic reality, $10,000, last year you had to sell, $100,000 worth of revenues. The widget might be $1 each. That's 100,000 widgets. The checkout tape might be $10 each, so that's only 10,000 sales. So if you're trying to make the number sound big, use the number of widgets, not the number of sales. But in certain circumstances, the number of sales makes sense too. Like in the restaurant business, for example, you can say how many orders of fries did you have to sell last year, or you can say how many lunches did you have to sell, the lunch being the sale, the fries being a widget. Now, you got to be really careful with things like fries, because fries, I would think, would be a high margin item. Food cost of potatoes is a lot less than hamburger, for example. And so you got to be careful. And that's why I footnoted in this very simplified example I did for you that we assumed, for simplifying assumption, that the box of Cheerios had the same margin as the EBITDA margin of the enterprise, the grocery as a whole. So you got to be careful when you make representations like that you have those footnotes clearly disclosed.